So I'm Robyn Tong Gray. I run a VR content studio down in Culver City called The World Interactive, and on weekends I also make a non-VR indie game.
Hi, my name is Sunni Pavlovic. I am a producer and studio manager at that game company, and I have a long track record of being a producer in the entertainment industry.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I work for an indie studio called Bonfire Studios, started by a bunch of ex-AAA devs. We're just getting started on making our first game.
I'm Katie Chironis. I have two jobs. By day, I am a narrative designer at Bright Games, and then by night, I run my own 10-person indie company where we're making a weird Shakespeare simulation game called Elsinore.
All right, I'm going to be semi-moderating this panel, and so based on interest, let's start with the million-dollar question. Where do you get funding?
So let's see, for Otherworld Interactive, we started in 2014. We do a mixture of contract work, and we try to get funding to make our own things. We just got funding to make our own thing, which is awesome, but we typically kind of have a contract running parallel to help feed whatever our in-house IP is. And then for my indie project, we did a Kickstarter, and we also work day jobs, and that usually pays for everything else that we need.
So at my studio, we started in 2006, and we did publisher deal back then, back when kind of indies first started, independent games first started getting big and actually more commercial. Currently we raised VC funding, and that is how we are. We got a big bunch of money, and then now it's just focusing on making the game.
Bonfire got very lucky. We got a big hunk of VC funding, basically based on very aggressive fundraising from our studio's founders, made a bunch of money off their name and previous experience.
So with Elsinore, we ran a Kickstarter way back in 2015. It's been quite a while. And we raised a little bit of money that kind of covered a certain percentage of the cost, but I would say at this point the vast majority of it has been funded by the salaries of people on the team who are working day jobs in game development. I'm lucky that Riot and most of the companies I've worked for in the past have a fairly high comp bar, so I can kind of like funnel some of that into Elsinore, which again makes it kind of a weird question for things like, should we hire a PR person when that's coming out of my actual paycheck and budget for other things in my life?
So this leads us to our next question, which is, these are all very different models. Well, we're both VC in the VCoverse for fundraising. Based on our experiences, what do you think are the pros and cons of each of these strategies?
Yeah, so that also kind of ties into all of these things are kind of like lump sum money and dependent on what you're pitching and how you're pitching. So for our Kickstarter, unlike Katie, I refuse to put personal funds in because I'm still also on a startup budget. So we kickstarted to cover things that we could not ourselves do. And then after that money ran out, it's all like, well, we need more art. Too bad. I just got to figure out how to make that or work within my abilities to make that. For Otherworld, we work in the VR space, which is a different model from, I think, traditional games. So with VR, you have a very small market right now. You don't expect to make much money, if any, off of your games unless you're very lucky. So for us, it's all about, like, can we pitch something that appeals to a platform holder or someone else because there's a lack of content? And can we then pitch a large enough budget that we can make the game and kind of feel like we have a little bit of runway left over when we're done? All very tricky things to do. And then it's, if barring that, can we find someone who, like a movie studio, we've done some short interactive VR stuff for them, and do they want something for a movie or a TV show, et cetera, et cetera? Can we make enough money there that we then have money to make our own stuff with? But because of this structure, we are fortunately not beholden to anyone, as we might be if we took VC money. But on the other hand, we might not have much runway once we're done with each project, so then it's back to the drawing board, trying to get funding for the next thing.
So Robyn, you're saying you started off with Kickstarter.
I did Kickstarter for my independent project, which is a game called Apartment, which is a very strange indie thing that we don't expect to make money. It's about feelings. It makes people cry. Everything we make at Otherworld is much more commercially facing, and that we work a lot in the horror genre because that's a really good selling thing within the VR market. That does not sell that much in general. But it's not shooting people, which is something I'm not super into.
So with Otherworld, go ahead. Because I wanted to clarify. So with Otherworld, you are also taking on side projects, so you have an existing team to help fund.
Yes, so we take on side projects typically while we're making our own thing. If we're very lucky, which we have been recently, our next project is fully funded just for that project because we got lucky with the platform holder. which is increasingly rare as things go on and as VR grows.
And a quick follow-up. I know that Kickstarter is an increasingly popular way to kickstart your project. What were your experiences with that, and would you recommend it?
Oh yeah, so Katie and I both kickstarted in 2015. I think she started 2 days before we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what it looks like now. It seems like right now, and even when we funded, it was heading this way. Kickstarting is a way to supplement something that's already being funded by someone else. And it's a way to kind of grow your audience and get some press, and not necessarily a way to fund the full game. Like, full disclosure, we got $24,000, and that was perfectly calculated to cover rewards and taxes, and then some art and some sound, and that's it. Like, it did not go that far. 24K is nothing, but it was enough for us to do a side project on.
Yeah, Kickstarter's viability these days, I think, is generally fairly low unless you are supplementing with a different source. In general, I think people who have not made a game before and are turning to Kickstarter for funding, 9 times out of 10 will drastically underestimate the amount of money that they need. And if Kickstarter is your only source of funding, that leaves you in a really scary position when the funding inevitably runs out a year down the road or more. So
yeah,
I would not recommend it.
So I would say, like, even if you were a solo dev trying to just like get a living wage for a year from Kickstarter, if you make 50 minus taxes and all that, you might scrape by, but it would be tough. Yeah.
VC money, if you can lock in VC money, is, I think, probably one of the better ways to go, but it's really hard to do
without selling your soul to the devil,
or having a cult of personality, right? Like Shinova Chen and Rob
Hardo.
Yeah.
So that's how you do. Anything to contribute on the subject, Sunny?
VC. How's that work?
VC money?
Well, since the studio started out with a publishing deal, I think that is a viable way to go. Obviously, there's a lot of kind of nitty-gritty and pitfalls in making that deal, so it's not just like, oh, I found a publisher, great. Like, obviously, you have to be very careful about the details of whatever contract you sign, but assuming your publisher is decent, you will be paid to make the game you make. It's just that once the game is made, you may not make very much money, and then now you're back to the drawing board. So if you just want to make a game, it's a reasonable option. Definitely consider that. The reason why the studio switched to VC funding was because they felt that they made really high quality games, and then they did get to capture the profit from that because of the publishing model. They wanted to go, well, let's do it on our own, and then we won't have a publisher to maybe restrict us in certain ways or tell us how to market or when to go to market. So that was the calculus there, although...
At a high level, can you break down what you say, the publishing model?
Yes.
What is that like?
Can you be more specific?
Sure. So, as in contrast to why you can capture more return from...
Yes, okay. So, with a publisher, thank you, Chris. With the publisher, they will give you some upfront money, and then throughout a specified period of time, you hit milestones, and if you have goals, if you produce the content you promised you would, then they continue to fund you for the next milestone, and you go from there. Because they are taking on the risk and funding a project which may not ever end up selling, once the game does go to market, does start generating sales, generally deals go for the publisher, they earn all their money back, and then maybe once they've earned their money back, you may see some royalty, like it could be 5%, it could be 20%, it all kind of depends. And then some deals are like, you don't see any royalty, we're just paying you to make this game.
And that can also restrict you in terms of what platforms you can be on. Right. It also means sometimes they get a say in how you run operations. I definitely know a few teams who've met disasters because their publishers have been super hands-on, and that all depends on who you're working for and what terms can you get from them.
Having said that, actually, just recently I noticed that there's a lot more ways to fund a game, and not always with the traditional publishing model. Sometimes people just come in to give you money and then just tell you, look, you make the game however you want. Or they'll just come in at the end and it's like, we want a finished product, we're not funding your development. Or they'll say, we'll help you market, we won't help you market. So there are actually a lot more options these days. And
I think to a degree too, like, for better or for worse, if you are turning to VC or publisher funding, it's not like a charity investment, right? They hope that the game is going to be designed in such a way that it can monetize well. And so, like, at least for Elsinore, that was never really going to be an option for us because Shakespeare is not exactly a hot IP with the kids these days. So I think we felt that our options for going with a publisher, even if we wanted to, would be fairly low without sort of overhauling what the game was from the ground up.
Marketability.
Yeah. This brings us to another important topic, which has to do both with the creative direction of your studio and the funding model. Let's talk about marketability or lack thereof in indie games.
Do you want to continue that thread, Katie, that you're on with Elsener?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. So at least I think with Elsener, we kind of hit on this weird niche at a time when basically indie was starting to, like, the bubble was starting to burst a little bit, I guess, right? And, people talk about indie-apocalypse a lot. I don't know how much I really believe in that. But in general, I think there was a lot of panic around, like AAA, the rise of AAA and needing to be sheltered within something like a publisher VC model to really survive. And so with Elsener, we basically just went the total opposite direction, where we were like, progress is going to be monumentally slow, but at the same time, every decision that we are making is purely in the interest of the game that we're making, and we don't have to listen to any external advice or voices whatsoever. Like, they're not even in the conversation. And that seems to hit on a certain vein. Like, I think we got a lot of people starting to follow the game because that concept was appealing to them, of kind of slow indie, of it's going to take many, many years to produce this thing because we only work on Sundays, but at least we didn't make any compromises at all along the way, which is, kind of iron-fisted in a way, but I think maybe is compelling to some people.
You guys didn't originally think it would be as slow as it has been, though, right?
Not at all.
Yeah, same.
God, yeah. Making games is tough. It takes a long time.
Yeah, but the nice thing about the slow indie model is we had the same issue where we're like, it'll take us a year because this game's half done. 3 years later. But with Kickstarter, the nicest thing we found is we have a community. We monthly, bi-monthly put out an update so people know what we're doing, and they're like, cool, as long as we know what you're doing, we're pretty happy, and we're happy to pat you on the back and be like, yeah guys, keep doing it. Yeah. And that's really nice coming from my other job, which is how can I make this thing that I want to make, but also make it something that the broader general gaming audience will and make it something that I can impress you, the person I'm trying to get money from, want and yeah, so like I said, Apartment, also niche and weird. Indies like it, publishers would never have liked it. So the game that we're making next at Otherworld is a horror game that just really utilizes VR well, and it has a hook we hadn't seen, which is you have a evil hand puppet on your hand the whole game, and it talks to you, you interact with it, and you solve puzzles with it. And that hook alone, I think, really, and hopefully the fact that we've been in VR for a while, but honestly, we shopped around a ton of other really great ideas, and I think it was mainly that hook that people said, oh, we haven't seen that. It's in a genre that we know sells pretty well, and we're currently looking for content because VR has a lot of content, and that's kind of how we came up with something marketable and got some funding for that project.
Rachel, your studio is pretty early in.
We are very early in enough that I'm not sure that we have useful advice about what the pitch is. We've been pretty lucky so far in having quite a lot of creative agency over our project. I think maybe Sunny could speak better to the art of the pitch.
Yeah.
The art of the pitch.
A pitch to get funding or appealing to players, because I think we're still very much in development as well and figuring that out. So I actually wanted to touch back on what Katie had said. It sounds like you're very much working on a passion project, so marketability is not a concern. It's this is the thing you want to make.
To some degree, I mean, we are always trying to get more eyes on the project, and I think, weirdly, the fact that it is a side project has also helped with that in some ways, in the sense that, through Twitter, for example, a lot of people who follow me on Twitter don't follow me for Elsener at all. They follow me for my work in VR when I was at Oculus, or for my narrative design stuff, past games that I wrote years ago, and they then stumble upon Elsener by accident when I'm tweeting about it, but they're actually following me for something completely unrelated. So that actually, the fact that I have day jobs in other sort of studios ends up funneling people into Elsener, and they learned about it that way.
So it sounds like because you have interesting things to say and are involved in other things, it attracts people to you and therefore to your game.
I'd like to think so, yeah.
One way to think about it is if you're making a game that you would love to play, probably no one is so special with Snowflake. There are no other gamers that fit sort of your values and your artistic values. So, I mean, this sounds like a platitude, but you cannot make a game for everyone. You can make a game for a very small, passionate community, of which your dev team is probably a very good example. And so that's one way of thinking of the market. Anything else on marketability, friends?
I think that should be.
Yeah.
Do you have a thought, Chris?
Because you were talking partly about like funded projects and how it's funded. Have you made some unfunded projects before, or did you go straight into,
I mean, Apartment was unfunded before.
Yes.
And then, so with Apartment, the only reason we kickstarted it is I finished it as my master's thesis, and was like, I should submit this to things, and submitted it to IGF, and it was a student finalist. And we were like, oh, people like this. People are playing it at GDC. Oh, cool. Why don't we try kickstarting it? So that was entirely I'm happy making things for myself. I don't really have a huge drive for making things that everyone has to see and buy. I just want to sit in my corner and do my own thing. But that was kind of like other people also want to come sit in my corner and stare at this thing that I'm making. I might as well help it be the best thing it can be by getting more eyes on it and capitalizing on the fact that there is this little market. So
I have a bit of a philosophical question. It's so nice that community engagement has been a big part of your development of Apartment. To what extent have you allowed, throughout development, community input and community feedback to actually...
Not at all. No, community engagement for us is people believed in us. We want to make sure they know we're doing our best and give them the fact that this thing that they're hoping to play that they put money into is in fact not becoming vaporware. And then for us, it's they're kind of like my mom, where I'm they're counting on me. I can't disappoint them. So it helps me with my deadline and with giving you that urge every Sunday to be well, I can't go outside and play. I got to work on this thing. But that's about where it stops for me.
No community involvement.
No community involvement?
It only ends poorly. Be nice to your community, but the level to which they should be involved, people who have no game making craft, is a big old question mark. I don't know. Some people manage to make it work, right? But
I do think people come to you for a certain thing, and therefore they trust you to make that certain thing, and it's fine that they can.
My favorite thing was when we were running the Kickstarter, we had so many Danish people come to us and say, hey, I live near the actual Helsingborg Castle, and I would be happy to send you photos and videos and map it out for you. And I was like, that is so sweet, thank you so much, but actually the castle IRL is laid out in a horrible way for a game space and is very sort of non-traversable and would make for a terrible gameplay experience. So our version of Helsingborg Castle was nothing like the real thing. And I kind of had to very politely turn down those people who really meant well, right? They were oh, historical accuracy, but it just wasn't going to work for the game. But they had no way of knowing that. So.
I think, Chris, going back to your question, which is a good one, if you're a relative unknown in the industry, I think if you happen to be making something on your own time that you really love to make, and then be able to go pitch that is way more compelling for someone who's going to sign a check and give it to you than if you're hi, I really like making games. I can't show you anything. I have nothing to prove, but you should trust me and give me lots of money. So, having even a very small... The more fleshed out it can be, and the idea, and as well as something playable, then definitely more convincing it is for someone to give you money.
Blank check is a hard sell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, as I said, even though we're VR veterans at this point, I think almost all the platforms were you got this thing, cool prototype, and we're we don't have money to make a prototype right now.
And that very much is a chicken and egg. Yeah. I've heard that many, many times.
Yeah.
And even then, you asked me about making unfunded games. The people who worked on Elsinore, we had made student projects together for 5 years before we started on Elsinore. We had made upwards of 6-7 games together collectively. So that was not our first stab going in. We did not go in blind.
Yeah, and we definitely did a lot of contract stuff before we got to do anything significantly long of our own IP for VR.
Slight segue. One of my favorite topics in game making is this idea of creative democracy, which was sort of what I was edging at with my question to Robyn and Katie. Creative democracy. So we were just talking about what the right level of community involvement in determining your creative direction is, which is maybe none. I think that this leads us to another interesting question, which is on small to medium-sized team, there may only be 10 people on your team. What is your approach to creative democracy? Because if you're small enough, everyone could have a voice. But also, decision making is very difficult when 10 people all have equal say. So while it's a nice model in theory, in practice, question is what's practical, what's actually functional.
Nothing is more soul-sucking than trying to design by committee. We just finished our GDD, and it was
Which is
our game design doc, which we had to send into our publisher today and be like, here's what we think it'll be. But it was me and my 2 business partners on this venture, and then it was just me. Because I was like, okay, I got the gist of what you guys want. I'm going to go over here and actually finish this thing because this is taking too long. So for our team, we generally run 6 to 12 people, and I like to make sure everyone feels like they have creative input, but ultimately everything has to sync back to me because I'm the one who's managing, wrangling everything, and also sometimes engineering stuff. So for us, it's really like, oh, you're passionate about environmental art, you're the environmental 3D modeler, here's this box I'm going to give you, you can work all around in that box, but here are the bounds, and that's what I need. But otherwise, go play.
In terms of, I think the way that my studio likes to think about it is anyone can be an opener, but we let the experts be the closer. So anyone can contribute a good idea about game design, like, oh, like what if we had like flaming porcupines? Like, that's a great idea, man. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the art director to take this like big hodgepodge of ideas and to craft it into something filtered through his sense of taste, because that's why we hired him.
Right. Like, I think it's important for people that that they feel heard generally, but I don't necessarily think that in most cases it's important that you are accepting and implementing all ideas. Like this I kind of see as like my experience in India has largely been similar to student projects at a lot of universities where like it's kind of a weird creative democracy where nobody's like owning the project. Like there's no project director. I don't know how it works at like USC, for example, but at CMU, all of these were volunteer projects. So if anybody's too pissed off, they can just walk away because they're doing it for free and they're not, getting course credit or anything for it. And Elsinore's the same way. We're all in it basically. There's no money on the table really, so anybody could walk away if they don't feel heard. So like a lot of my job is in making sure that everyone feels that they're working on something they feel creatively and personally invested in, and that when they surface ideas, they're at least seriously considered. But then a lot of the time, you're right, it's better to have, like, I will often defer to, Connor's our designer, I'll say, look, Connor gets to make the final call here. I don't care how passionately the engineers feel about something. If it's a design matter, he has the final call.
Right, and I think what you were getting at something really important, which is expectation setting, especially in the indie community. We're a big walking group hub. We want people to feel included, but at the same time, don't tell your team that like, yo, we're a creative democracy and everyone has equal input on game design when that's not true. You had a question there in the back?
Yeah, just building on that, I was curious about, as each of your teams have grown, how your like practical communication strategies adjusted or changed, especially if you have people who are not on site and you've previously kind of been huddling in a shared space or what have you.
Yeah, so that leads into another thing we were going to talk about, which is kind of the mixture of having remote people working not 9 to 5 every day and doing that kind of communication.
So you were just talking about how you now have remote work at that game company.
Yeah, so for the longest time it was always like you need to be in the studio because this is a very like highly intense and collaborative process and things are changing so fast. Like you have to be available to like either work through questions and problems. So it's only recently that we have taken on some remote developers. And I think one thing that's really working in favor of that for us is that it's a very senior team. So it's like individuals who have a proven track record of like, I know what it takes to ship a game, I know what the process looks like, I know how to communicate, and they've already proven themselves to have like, I've successfully worked remotely. I think that to just take someone you've never met before, like maybe they're in a different country, but they seem really talented, and then saying like, hey, we're just going to juggle the time zones and we haven't met and you're not actually emotionally invested in this could lead to a lot of difficulty. So I think trying to find something where you give them an individual the right amount of responsibility based on their track record and how they've proven themselves and how well you know them.
I think rituals too. We on Elsinore we have 3 weekly rituals which are non-negotiables. Number one, this is less of a ritual, more of a practice. We use Slack very extensively and very heavily, and we segment by sort of discipline into the channels. We have a Sunday work session every single Sunday and have for 5 years, which starts at noon and goes until probably 6 or 7 p.m. whenever people have to go. And then we have a Thursday night triage where we take all tasks that sort of are on the table and we go through them all in a list on Trello and we sort of talk about them and assign a priority to them. And then you don't work on anything unless it's already been triaged. anybody who's a contractor, like we've had animation contractors, we have a QA contractor right now, I'll try and have a weekly check-in call with them, even if it's just 5 minutes. Just say, hey, how are things going? Do you need anything? Is everything cool? And then as time goes on, if they prove that they can work independently, that's no longer necessary. So it kind of can peter off. But I just try, if you haven't heard from somebody in like a week as a remote worker, that's very worrying.
Yeah. There's also just a certain amount of energy time wasted on remote people. So it's definitely it's a mixture for us. We had people in the far remote reaches of Orange County, and I would be like, what are you doing? Come on, man. Like, you're in, at least one day a week usually, and then I don't hear from you the rest of the week, and then that's more of my time that is now spent chasing people down. So it's how big is your team? How much, like, when I'm doing multiple tasks, can I afford to be managing this person over here? All this other stuff. It's definitely worth paying a bit more for more experienced, more veteran people if they're going to be remote.
It sounds like you're paying for overhead one way or the other. Either is that you're paying for the office space, they are there, you're paying them more, or you're paying the management and communication overhead of like what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Overhead is a good word. I also like the word rituals. I think like the philosophy is like your team is going to be built and cemented out of how well they communicate with each other. And so you, in designing a team culture, team organization, want to lower the overhead cost, especially for introverted people, lower the overhead cost of communication. And like it's a tricky balance finding out like what is the useful versus obnoxious level of process for your particular team. And there's absolutely no formula in IMO. But consider things like I think one-on-one meetings are great because every time I have to talk to Sunni about something, like I have to in my mind say like, all right, schedule a meeting with Sunni about this thing. She's busy, I'm busy. It's a bit of overhead as opposed to every Thursday just having an open forum, a platform for us to be like, let's do a quick brain dump is really, I think is really key if you have a key relationship with somebody on your team. So thinking about setting up platforms with low overhead, I think has been key in communication for our team. Because don't assume that it's just going to continue to be easy. Especially, I loved your question about how things change as teams scale. Like going from 8 to 12, even just 8 to 12 is huge.
Yeah, there's something about maybe like the 10 and a slightly higher person mark where the field definitely changes.
Right.
And something you said really reminds me. I want to make a quick point of if you're gonna have a meeting, you must have an agenda.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You have to know what you want to walk out of that meeting having established, decided on, and will be actionable. Just getting people in a room to be like, this is what's wrong with the game. Not a good idea.
Also, if you're doing a creative meeting and it's run past an hour, it's probably not doing anything anymore. You can stop.
I think another thing on the meeting side is try to decide not just what you want to do in the meeting, but like what part of the process you're in. I think like brainstorming meeting is very different from like a decision-making meeting. And I think I see a lot of time get wasted in meetings because those wires are crossed. Some person's like, all right, I'm in here to critique ideas and like drive the decision home. The other person's like, let's just like talk about all of our like fun like spark plug ideas, and it's not going to happen.
You said that you worked on a lot of student projects. I'm currently working on my senior thesis, so I was wondering is that I have a lot of smaller tasks that I don't have the time to complete by myself. So my team is comprised of maybe somewhere between 8 and 20 students, all doing various smaller to larger tasks. How do you keep track of a team when not all members are doing as committed work, but you still need to get stuff done?
You need a producer.
Yeah, you need a producer.
Do you recommend a separate producer from like the director?
Absolutely. Okay, so to me that's a non-negotiable. So the production design relationship, I would say this as a designer. Designers will blow shit up in terms of increasing the scope and having the wild dreams, and producers are like, fuck you, no. Bring it back down. Because
we want to ship.
Yeah, we need to ship. A good producer can be doing things like tracking these tasks in Trello, adding people and removing people depending on who's active right now, time boxing these tasks and checking in like, hey, we said we'd be done by Tuesday, where are we at on this? Maybe we should kill it or de-scope it if it's not getting done. That is a whole skill set.
Also, that reminds me, pros and cons versus funding. With a publisher, if you don't meet your milestone, you don't get money. When you have a VC and they give you a lot of money up front, it's just like, let's make a game. So sometimes it's good to have that enforced discipline.
I would say that I've always in a flawed fashion, done all my own producing as well as doing most of the directing and design. So really it depends on how much can your brain load take. For me, I have a certain OCD thing that's like, all right, mornings, who haven't I heard from in a while? I'm just going to ping them relentlessly. And I will say also that like student projects, as hard as making shipped games that people will actually spend money on is, making student projects with not quite committed students working on it is far harder when it comes to
how do you
production load.
motivate students when you don't have pay or class credit?
Most people that I've known as students who ran really successful ships were like, hey, if you pop up on Fridays, I'll pizza.
Yeah.
come work. Here's some food. I got some cookies or whatever like that.
It's like salary for college students.
I think
Go ahead.
just from my college days, there definitely was a spectrum of very committed, we really want to like deliver this creative project versus like, hey, I'm just taking this for course credit. Cool, this is kind of fun. I think it's important to assign like critical tasks to those who are very committed, and then just accept that some stuff's not going to get done, and you assign it appropriately if you can.
Yeah, or scope and scale it back.
What you said though, passion and leveraging passionate folks, brings us to another fun bullet point, which is passion versus crunch. We all know our industry has issues with crunch, and so there's an interesting line between wanting to hunker down with all your bros in a garage and or gals. I'm so sorry. I was
Bros and gals.
Fine line between like wanting to hunker down and just get it done for no money, and also making sure that your team has reasonable quality of life. Can we discuss that real quick?
I mean, when you're working with a volunteer team or a student team, anything over a normal amount of work, people will just leave. So like, I never really had the option to crunch people on Elsinore. That being said, we will occasionally do like a weekend jam where we're like, all right, Friday night, bottle of wine, pizza, everyone at your computers. We are working until Sunday, and then we do that. But that's very rare. That would be like once a year to catch up on
Game development is a slow, painful slog. It is never a dash. So it's all about what is my stamina and how can I extend it beyond what I humanly thought possible. Because there's always a point in the project where you're like, I'm not excited about this anymore. I still love you because you're my game baby, but at the same time I don't like you right now, but I'm going to just continue just clawing. And I think like crunch, and much less regular crunch, it just makes it so much harder to finish because of that. For us it's all about scope. Like I don't like crunch. I'm not even for my pet projects will I ever crunch for more than, I don't know, a few weeks. And I never expect anyone to even put that time in on a project that is not their own. And that's what you have to expect and account for when you're scoping a project.
Yeah, scoping is really important. I think it's also important to distinguish between what is crunch and what is that passion. Like, I'm just putting in extra hours. So for me, crunch is like, it's semi-mandatory, or it's like, it'd be really good if you did this. And it's like, I'm just going to take away your weekends. Oh, sorry, cancel all your plans. Like from a studio perspective, it's when you just basically piss off your team. That's crunch. And passion is like, hey, I'm working on a really cool feature right now. I just want to put in some extra hours. No one's telling me to do it. This is fun.
Yeah, passion is definitely, we can't get this in, but if someone really loves it, we could try. And if they are willing to do that, we can try. But otherwise, don't worry about it.
I think those are the only times that I've actually seen crunches because I will always cut scope over ever asking people to crunch. But there have been times when I'm like, okay, we gotta cut this feature, it's too much, and somebody will say, no, I really want it, let me work on it and keep it, and I'm like, okay, I mean, but I would rather cut it, but if you really want it, then yes, you can do that.
I just want to say to the same point of like part of the value of the producers, because sometimes we imagine producers like, oh, make sure that the ones who aren't getting stuff done get it done. It also, part of where we see the passion crunch thing emerge, especially on enormous AAA studios, is like, as a bunch of level designers, we might be passionate about, we really want to be able to get this thing into show, and the producer gets excited about it. That creates mandatory work for animators, sound people, etc., to be able to support this area that they stayed late from passion, ripple to everybody else. And so sometimes just the producer being able to say no to the passionate person because it's going to invent work for others and create crunch as a side effect.
That's a very excellent point. Be aware of your splash radius when you're working, because I think very rarely in game development, which is such a highly interdisciplinary field, can you just be like, I'm going to put the team on my back, yo. We're all in this together. And be aware that while it sounds like all of you guys have a good handle on like where that distinction is, sometimes it's not as clear cut. The like, you need to stay on a Saturday versus like, well, you could stay if you want. I think oftentimes like there's a tonal difference that creates implicit pressure, even if you're not outright asking people to stay. So please be aware of that. A friend was telling me at his AAA studio, the producer would come around and be like, "Oh hey, can you raise your hand if you're staying on a Saturday?" And then everyone would be like, "Well, I'm gonna feel like an idiot if I don't raise my hand also." So be aware of those sorts of problems.
It's always better to cut a feature than to possibly crush someone and drop them out of the industry, so, which we have enough of already.
Yeah, I think especially if you're in some kind of leadership position, like when you're the person staying late every day, like you are sending a message to your team. So like sometimes like even if you're still gonna go work, just like, make sure you leave, go get dinner, you can come back or just work at home, but don't make it harder on your team. And also I know that if I'm sending you Slack messages after hours, I explicitly tell my team like, this is so when you get into the office the next day you can respond. It's not because I message you, you must respond immediately. So it's like small things, so being considerate of your team or what it is.
Definitely. Or even the way that you talk about yourself as opposed to other people. We have an engineer on our team who's amazing, just churning out features, and every once in a while he'll be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. I made this bug." And I'm like, "Calm down. We've all made this bug 10 times over. Like, don't make the rest of us feel bad for this." Little tonal problems.
I think we're at our 40-minute mark. Should we open for Q&A?
Oh, yes, we should.
Is there a way you could elaborate more on other kind of like low-level culture things that you can do to kind of set up the correct culture in your team as a leader? Just more on that, because that is kind of a good direction.
Or like, is there a specific concern you'd want to address?
Well, for example, how would you deal with setting up a culture so that team members don't overwork themselves more so on their own accord, like behind your back and stuff like that? Okay. Because like you're talking about how you were saying don't do this, but what if they continue to do that? How would you deal with approaching a team member and saying, "Hey, you're working a little bit too hard. Why don't you take the day off to sleep or to grab food?"
Yeah, I think sometimes you do have to take team members aside and saying like, "Hey, I think you're doing a really great job. You are so committed. I'm not even worried about that. I am worried that maybe you're working a little bit too hard, and maybe because you're newer to the industry, you have like all this zeal and enthusiasm, but I'm worried because I know longer term you might get really tired, and I'm highly encouraging you to please go do this thing. Please take a day off."
And how do you know when that line is crossed where you kind of should step in?
Are they the first person and last person to leave every single day? Are they the person who's like, "I'm skipping lunch, I will do this, I'm volunteering to do more work, I was here on Saturday"?
Commits in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends too, like if this has been a prolonged thing, right? If it's going on for longer than like a month that this person is working like this, I would stop them after a month. And my experience too has been like not like working in the industry as well as on indie projects where I'm running the show, when I'm managing people as well in my day job. Like a lot of the time, having a personal plan for each person that you're sort of managing or who's on your team and working with them, and just making sure that every single person comes at it with a vision for their own involvement with the project and what they'd like to be doing and how they'd like to grow and things they'd like to be doing in several months or a year. And as the project lead, if you have that conversation with them on a regular basis, like, "Hey, you're like doing really well in this area. I think this is looking really good." And I think like helping get them to the point if they are doing props and they want to be doing characters down the line, "Hey, let's have you start on one of the NPC guards and see how that goes," and then kind of move you up from there. When people feel heard and like leadership is seeing them and has a conversation with them, I think people are less likely to either quietly overwork themselves or massively underwork themselves, which is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. And just make sure that you're talking to those people very regularly.
Sorry. I was going to say also modeling good behavior and, for example, making sure that it's clear that there is an expectation that they have a life outside of work, taking an interest in them outside of work, even if it's just, "Hey, how's your kitty doing? I know that, like that way it's not just, I'm only talking to you because your only value to me is the work you produce and I don't care otherwise."
Also, it's good not to foster that like one-upmanship feel that I was a programmer originally in undergrad, and that was very much like, "Well, I stayed up this many hours and did all this stuff on my code," and like that's not a good thing. Like that's not something you want to encourage.
Well, how do you avoid that specifically, the one-upmanship?
The one-upmanship is hard, I think. I mean, we don't have that in our studio simply because I'm just like, "Oh, you guys are doing all this other different cool stuff. That's great." say, like, I don't know. Do you guys have recommendations for one-upmanship? We just don't really track those kind of
If
personalities.
somebody brags about how much they overwork themselves, that is an undesirable trait that I would not hire for.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I think you
And
can usually suss that out.
it's also like, as much as you should be concerned for people regularly overwork themselves, it's also a red flag for you and your project, because it's a matter of time before they're just completely out because they burn themselves out, or something else is going to be an issue too.
Something I really appreciate, I like what you said, Sunny. I think it's like treating people like holistic humans as opposed to like work bots, which sounds pretty obvious, but also setting examples, as Sunny said. I really appreciate that my studio leadership will post to Slack, not just, we have like an adventures channel, people like, I went hiking this weekend, or I left a little early on Friday to go hiking this weekend. And I think it's a good culture feel to feel comfortable not just talking about your work triumphs, but also the work-life balance is key.
Something you and I were talking about in the drive here was also just appreciating people who do work for you. Like, I'm not extremely verbally complimentary, but when you are leadership, that goes a long way to like point out something someone did that maybe they didn't even think, like, it was so small, and you're just like, oh, you did this like thing I didn't ask you for, that was awesome, thank you. Again, we'll bring food into the office for people. We do game nights sometimes. Just any like small thing you can do, even if you're strapped on funding, can like go a long way to making it feel more like a team and less like I'm just grinding through work.
So there's like proactive actions in creating good culture and also reactions. And I'd say like one really crucial thing is make sure you reward people for doing things that you like. For example, it drives me nuts when somebody's like, oh, I'm going to share this really cool demo that I made over the weekend on the Slack channel, hopefully not over the weekend. And then nobody says anything. I'm like, no, this is exactly what we want to see. This is the sort of collaborative environment we want to encourage. So like make sure that when someone takes the time to do that, you're like, yo, that was awesome.
Fostering nurture positive behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you see a sense of one-upmanship, I would also call that out too. Of like, take that person aside and say like, hey, I actually don't appreciate it because you're making other people feel bad.
Remember that you're a team.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about you. It's like about the project.
Do you have any other questions?
Anything we didn't hit? Wait, Robyn, you wanted to talk about budgeting and
burn rate.
Oh, yeah. Quick rule of thumb that seems to be really good for indies is figuring out funding. Obviously, you ask for money, you want to ask for it one time. You want to run out. Budget-wise, the general rule of thumb is it's $10K per person per month. So if I have 4 artists, I assume that's going to be $40K, not just in salary, but in overhead and other unexpected things.
Expenses.
Licenses, legal, et cetera, et cetera. So that's like the very comfortable, cushy rule of thumb that you should live by if you're thinking about expanding beyond just yourself or like a couple partners.
Do we want to talk about how to calculate burn rate or why?
Oh, I mean, I think the 10K per month per person is generally a pretty good burn rate calculator. I think you see very few medium studios because if you're small, it's just kind of you and one other person. You can figure out your own means of survival. If you're huge, then you're AAA and you're making all these crazy things. Yeah, so medium rate is definitely by far the hardest thing to maintain. You see it time and time again, even with, Telltale, Double Fine, all the other things. It's just really hard to strike a balance. For us, we talk about, there's all these things you can learn about business-wise, like should I be an LLC or an S Corp? Am I trying to hire employees? Do I have to hire contractors? And what do all those things mean for my
But why do they matter?
And why do they matter?
Why do they matter? Why does it matter to think about the legal stuff?
Why is it
Oh my God, I have the number of student projects I've seen where they then decided to go be a company afterwards and then went down fast.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're suing each other and it's bad.
If you're doing
That's
student
ugly.
projects, make sure you have everyone who works on your IP do an IP release, which just says, hey, if I use your, I'll put your name on and all this other stuff, but I own the IP. Because that's just the easiest thing you can do to avoid crazy student friction.
Yeah.
Any other easy gotchas?
But the legal formation of the company also is important if you're going to get investors or not, because they're going to want a Delaware C Corp, for example, things like that.
Yeah, you need to have an LLC, even to put a game on Steam. I think you need an LLC to assign the money that they pay you out for, and that's like $800 a year in California. So maybe
Which you also need to budget for.
Which you also need to budget for, and also maybe you don't make that too early because now you're paying $800 a month and not making any money. You're just losing money every time.
If I can accentuate sort of the immediate use case for like those IP releases and their importance, even if someone in this room, I pay you $500 to make a certain piece of art for my game, and we release the game, but I didn't actually get your IP release, you still own the rights to that art. you can at any point then go after me because you can say you have to take the game down because even though I paid you money for it, surprise, that has nothing to do with me owning the right to use that art in this piece. And if you have a big team of a lot of people, that's a lot of vulnerability to any single person at any point being like yanking it down until I'm in a super too late to negotiate position.
And as much as we always go, I know these people, they're my friends, just do it anyways.
There's an online site like Contract.io or something that somebody put together. Yeah, do contracts. Our lawyers laughed at that. Like, please don't use that. It's not legally watertight, and a lot of people use it because it's a free resource aimed at indie game developers. It is not in any way, like sort of protecting you.
If you're in a game program and they don't have this already, I would urge you to get your like chair or whatever to make sure that they just have like a simple IP release form that they can give to the students in your school. It's part of what you're paying your school for.
Another gotcha with schools too is oftentimes. This may not be true everywhere, but a lot of schools will claim ownership to IP that students create, if it is in a class or if it is using any of the resources of the school. Just check out your situation and see what it is if you are starting off as a student team.
Hackathons. Be careful with hackathons. You'll often have to sign away like a chunk of your project without knowing it, and when you participate in a funded event like that.
I did one where verbally they kept stressing, we're not trying to enter IP from this whatever. But if you actually read all the stuff, but they were allowed to make sequels to it without my permission. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that equivalently means you own my IP. I'm out of here.
We don't want this one. We just want everyone.
Yeah, we just want
every last iteration.
Yeah.
I think we are technically out of time, but are there any other questions?
If not, I think we'll probably be available for a few minutes after to talk personally.
Yeah.